Okay, we're live. Welcome to Dive into World Building, and we are back to talk about footwear because you can never get enough of shoes. Well, so basically, yeah. So we got to the end of the last discussion of shoes, and we were like, oh my gosh, there's more we need to talk about with shoes. And
more shoes.
Yeah. And so for example, we can start with the things you have to wear on your foot if you have a medical issue. I think one of the things that got mentioned last time was orthotics, right?
Yeah, I think we talked about orthotics a little bit.
Well, I think it got mentioned maybe in the after party as something that we needed to do more with.
I think so.
So basically, adaptive shoes, things where you have to have a special shape for your shoes. Some people need to have one shoe that's much taller than the other because their legs are different lengths. Then there are things like our poor friend Paul is suffering through right now. The therapeutic boot.
Which is a revolution, though, because we didn't used to do that. We used to just throw everything into those itchy plaster casts.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, yeah. If I had to pick between boot and cast, I'll take the boot. But this boot is, gigantic.
You need an anti-grav boot.
What do you really need an anti-grav?
Not Baron Harkonnen. Honest.
Yeah, but I think he had his.
Well, that was an entire anti-grav,
like his tummy
pants.
or something.
That I'm just saying that we could just lighten the load so that the boot would be 0 added weight.
Agreed.
Sort of a compensatory.
Now I want to talk about
strategy,
amputees and spring-loaded prosthetics and things. But
yeah, I was actually I was thinking about that 2 seconds ago when we were talking about medical, where I was like, we should talk about prosthetics because they have such amazing prosthetics now.
They do, and also
like the running blades are so cool.
Running blades, and I haven't seen all the other things, but seriously, pretty has become a thing, which is really nice. Also, just that. I grew up with the promise of the sort of like high heels that you can do sports in.
Oh.
And I think we've mostly gotten away from that culturally. But that was very much a thing that I remember being promised, and not a single one of them ever really worked for me.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else who tried them.
Well, I mean, the things that you wear on your feet, I mean, it's worth mentioning this. We did mention this last time, but the things that we wear on your feet really change the shape of your feet.
We talked about bunions and things, I think, right?
Yeah, we talked about bunions, and I think foot binding got mentioned briefly.
We also didn't talk about the way your tendons shorten when you're wearing heels all the time. But we did talk about calluses between your big toe and your next toe.
Yeah.
And we talked about ballerina feet. We also did not talk about the expectations of which toes would be shorter or longer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which
there is that.
Which is a problem. I have a long second toe, and a lot of shoes expect you not to.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
If you're wearing those Vibram 5 fingers shoes, they expect that your toes will just go on a line. And I'm very suspicious of these shoes because I have a problem with gloves where the fingers are always too long. And so I'm convinced that the toes will be like not quite. Everything else in the shoe mechanics is difficult anyway. I'm not entirely convinced that these foot gloves are worthwhile.
I tried them on one time, and they were shockingly unsuited to my foot.
I think it comes down to the people who love them really love them, but they have Vibram 5-finger shaped feet.
Yeah. That's true. The other thing that I found was that I couldn't stand the form of stimulation between my toes.
I have friends who really, really like the toe socks.
Yeah.
And think of them as the height of comfort and happiness. And toe socks make me uncomfortable.
So here's the thing. I go barefoot or wear sneakers all summer, and I wear them. They're comfortable. They're not tight. Then it gets to be wintertime and I have to put my boots on, and my foot is relaxed and sort of spread out and has to become accustomed to being together and compressed in the boot. You know, just, and the things that shoes do to your feet in terms of changing shape.
Yeah, yeah.
I do have a bunch of boots that are designed for polar expeditions, so they're designed with toe wiggle.
Oh, yeah.
I have a pair of Baffin Island boots that are designed for Arctic mud, for freezing mud. They go up to the high calf, but then there's a gaiter that takes them all the way up to my knees as a little cuff sleeve, and they're very, very insulated. So in a typical upper Midwestern winter, they're a kind of overkill. So I don't bother wearing thick socks with them because I have warm feet, and I don't. This is getting very intimate.
It is. But it's absolutely useful this winter, especially.
It has been kind of bananas. I was talking to a friend when it was 24 degrees Fahrenheit here, and they were in 24 degrees Celsius. And that was a little distressing. And then, yeah, there was a day when I went out and it had been raining the day before. So somehow I don't know what happened. Maybe the tropics have turned my head or something, but I went out as if I didn't need to wear gloves and a hat. I only went out for a 5-minute walk, but Father Frost and I had a conversation. I don't know that I'm doing that again.
Oh dear. Well, you know, it's interesting because as we talk about footwear, we end up talking about feet. And feet are probably a topic in and of themselves just because there are so many cultural things surrounding feet, you know, which some of them tie into the footwear question, like whether you're expected to keep your feet covered all the time, you know, or whether you're expected to talk about your feet. Should I talk about my feet?
Are they taboo? I've had a whole conversation with people about, are your feet actually a flexing part of your body, or are they just slabs at the end of your legs?
Wow.
So also linguistically in Japanese, there's no distinction between the part of your lower appendage that hits the ground and the part that's connected to your hip. Yeah. It's all the same word.
Yeah.
Which I find fascinating.
So my dad can write with his feet if he puts a pen or pencil between his big toe and second toe and snap them like that. So I can do that to an extent, but I don't think I practiced as much as he did. So, you know, I can write like wobbly with my foot.
I knew somebody, so your dad could like write legibly?
Yeah, but large.
Yeah, okay. Goals. I knew somebody who could hold an orange between the big toe and the next toe.
Wow.
Sure. So it was, I don't know if anyone's ever read, this is a bit of world building. Hey, we're here for world building.
We are.
If anyone's ever read Nova by Samuel R. Delaney, but one of the details was that spacers wore one shoe out in space so that they would have a third hand, essentially, in 0G. And it was a big deal. They walked around with one shoe, which I always thought would cause all sorts of chiropractic issues. But that was a thing.
Why wouldn't you just not wear either shoe?
I don't know. I never asked Chip that question.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go do the thing and ask Chip the question.
Excellent. I want to hear the answer.
Yeah. Why?
We just follow on with my history of asking authors difficult questions. I'm going to be in so much trouble when I'm out there with my own work.
People are going to be like, and why did you do
Karma
that?
will come.
Karma is going to fall on me. I just put out a bio that said that my gig was making sure the internet doesn't fall on your head. I don't know. Internet's probably getting like giantly massed above my head. So let's talk about like pet shoes.
Pet shoes, animal shoes.
Like dogs are being shod right now because it's so cold.
Yeah.
And part of me is kind of going, And then I look at the huskies being happy, but I have to conclude that, you know, a husky is not a chihuahua, so it probably makes sense.
Well,
I'm not entirely sure
that
what
is
happens
true.
to dog paws in various cold places, but it's an interesting idea.
Well,
But,
I mean, when you look at animal feet, some are well adapted to cold and some are not, you know. Lynx paws have lots and lots of fur between the pads that kind of insulates the pads and makes them kind of big and snowshoey. And so, you know, if you were a Chihuahua and you don't have that, and your entire foot is about that big.
Well, I mean, right now you could lose a Chihuahua in a snowdrift, so.
Yeah, totally.
I'm also thinking about like flippers, right? And has
wearing
anybody written
flippers.
a culture where maybe you have shoes that would like expand when it was wet and contract when it was cold, dry, so that your flippers would like sort of gather in, so that you wouldn't have to. Okay, maybe I have to write this story.
But, yes, I want to see it.
I'm also thinking about the fact that a lot of science fiction authors have written about putting magnets in the foot gear. Yeah. Assuming you have a Pharaoh's Hall, which is kind of a cute world building element.
There's a great scene in 2001 where I think they have special gripper soles, like Velcro kind of things, and we watch the like flight attendant go in a circle slowly to upside down with these shoes, like right the whole time in a slow and languid way that only a 1968 film could get away with. Like a modern film could never have the scene that slow, but we're watching her special grippy shoes. That was a visual element.
I was promised shoes that would have like spider technology so that I could like do things. I've yet to see these. I'm a little disappointed.
I think they're designing gecko shoes.
I think that's the thing.
And gloves, yeah.
Although I want adult size Heelys. For people who don't know what Heelys are, they're shoes that are very popular with tweens and teens, where there's a little wheel that comes out of the heel of the shoe so that you can sort of glide around if you put your feet in just the right angle. You can.
Yeah, I can't stand those though, because I mean, I think that the heel is like a really unstable place to put a wheel.
Like school administrators all across the country are very opposed to them, and it's difficult.
I mentioned those very briefly last time, but yeah, I mean, it's a certain marker of a certain tech level and a certain age.
I want shoes that convert from roller skate to not roller skate. That would be really convenient. I could like roller skate up to go do my errands and then like walk around in the store like politely and then skate back. Sounds awesome.
No, I want them too, but I want them to be like Inspector Gadget feet, where they just, you know, go and then convert. Maybe jet powered skate. That would be cool.
Well, they're with the rocket boots.
Yeah.
I've gotten I've gotten a calf burn from the exhaust pipe on a motorcycle, so I'm a little leery about jet powered boots.
Just wear leathers.
Something terrible that. Yeah, okay.
It'll be fine.
But like in a Chicago summer, that's just.
You know, actually, I'm gonna take us off on a little tangent for a second and talk about the development of roller skates, because I think that's actually kind of interesting, right? Because what you used to have these clamps with wheels on them that you would stick on your regular
metal wheels.
Yep. I had those
metal wheels, and you'd wind them on, and then you tighten them up with a key, right? And and then from there we got to, what did we get to? Then we got to building them into the boot, right?
I had vinyl boots with urethane wheels when I was learning, and like my parents and grandparents' generation, people look at me and go, wow, look at those. I mean, when I was a kid, and then, but I had like red wheels that were a plastic that you could kind of sort of see through.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, it went from there to what we're having now, which is like the kind of roller skates that have 4 wheels on them are so retro.
So there's an interesting divergence going on because a lot of the ski boot people kind of went and developed the rollerblades.
Mm-hmm.
And so those wheels have been adapted to end up in other odd places. And of course, the skateboard wheels, which was the same thing at one point as the roller skate wheels, have now diverged into a different direction, and the materials have all changed.
Mm-hmm.
And quad skates, though, are allow a certain kind of roller dancing in a way that the inline skates don't. But when people are doing inline figure skating, they are using the inlines.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's so people who are doing sort of street skating, parkour kind of things, like the inline skates as well. But I've also seen a resurgence of clamp on your shoes skates.
Yeah.
With different technology coming on. And also people trying to move the wheels around again. There's a company in California called Cardiff Skates that has a style where there's a skate on either, there's a wheel on either side of your shoe, and then one fore and aft, which changes how you interact a little bit.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I've heard mixed reviews between people who love them and people who hate them. I am very intrigued. Partly because they are, first of all, because it's the kind of thing I'm intrigued by. But second of all, because they are not one size. They are, one size fits this range and another size fits this other range. And so I like this idea of like guest roller skates, except that, of course, this just is probably not, my guests are going to end up like Paul with Das Bulletin. So. But I have an emergency room really close by. I don't know.
We don't want to cause terrible accidents for our guests.
I have been keeping a certain range of snow boots for people who might show up who might not be ready for this. Because I have friends from other parts of the world. And when we are in a cold adapted environment, we expect that we have these. But partly also because I grew up with, my parents did not actually provide bathroom slippers, but I knew about them, which is a very Japanese thing for having special shoes you wear in the bathroom that you don't wear anywhere else, because why would you want to take that back out into the...
Yeah.
And so people have interesting...
It's like a rite of passage for people who are living in Japan. If you haven't been caught outside the bathroom wearing the bathroom slippers at least once, you really aren't doing it right.
I think the nightmare scenario I keep hearing about is when you're a guy with like big gaijin feet and you don't fit into the bathroom slippers. What are you supposed to do? I am on team have disposable shoe covers, but that's because I have to accommodate a huge range of things. I mean, I have friends who wear orthotic shoes with like braces and things in them because of various accessibility needs that people have. So I once again find myself realizing that I don't know enough about what happens for someone who needs that kind of accommodation in a very shoes on, shoes off culture.
That's true.
And then we could talk about wet weather gear for shoes.
Okay.
Well, can I do a couple of skating things? Worldbuilding skating things first?
Yeah, do skating things.
And then I want to do actually another thing we didn't even touch on last time. So roller derby is a sport and a whole subculture that exists entirely because of footwear. Right? You need roller skates to create the whole, and it's this kind of, badass feminist subculture where everyone has like fake, like aliases, and they're all like killer aliases, and that it's all women, and it's the regular skates, right? The 4x4, the quad
skates, yeah.
And because it dates back to I think the 1970s. Is
it only the 70s?
It might be earlier, but it
could be earlier.
It's certainly not later than that because I remember it being around back. My point is, it dates back to the previous, before the invention of inline skates.
You are not going to believe what year.
Okay, 1957? No? Tell me.
The term roller derby dates back to the 1920s.
Oh, wow.
Originally used to describe roller skate races. And then in 1930s, they went to a raised track and a bunch of other things.
Flappers roller skating?
Sure, why not?
Apparently.
They did a dance called the Shag. Why not?
There's an association called the Women's Flat Track Derby Association that I'm looking at right now. That WFTDA.org that has a whole history that starts with. And then there's the banked skating, which is different. So
that's a whole subculture based around skates. And you could do like 0G Velcro boots women's derby kind of subculture if you wanted to invent that, right? It could all be special boots for you for 0G. There's a whole
ice skates, right? I was watching a woman who was using old school skates to get across Lake Baikal. And she actually like ties them onto her feet, like with ropes. I think it's just a little sledge kind of thing for your feet. And we've gone all the way from there on Hans Brinker to, speaking of footgear evolving. Have you looked at those Olympic clap skates?
Yes.
Those are wild.
Yeah.
And then there's Henry Lien's Peace Sprout Chen books, which are all about the skates.
Yes.
You guys know what that
is built around the skates.
Yeah, there's these special skates for long track speed skating, and their blades are incredibly long, and they're hinged at the front, so that as you skate forward and then you lift your foot, the blade stays on the ice, and then as you pick your foot off, it claps up and rejoins the skate.
Yeah, which is why they're called clap skates.
And the longer, basically, the idea is that the longer your blade is on the ice, faster you go.
And there's this special stuff the whole city is made of that's not ice, but is this other material.
So you're talking about Henry Lien, because somehow you said something and I didn't hear it there.
No, that was it, Henry Lien.
Yeah, I wanted to mention him. I'm glad you brought him up.
P. Sprout Chen, 2 books out now so far.
Shoes and world building.
Yeah, he invented a whole martial art. There was a combination of, what was it, Kung Fu and figure skating?
Kung Fu and figure skating,
yeah. And so you can't do that. If you
haven't seen his hangouts, you should go see his hangouts because they're really awesome.
And not only is it not, does figure skating not need ice? There's an entire city built around this footwear made of a skatable material.
Yeah, it's called Pearl. It's like
and so he went, footgear, world building champion. I mean that was epic footgear world building right there. It was all about the footgear. So there you go. You can do that. That's pretty exciting. But I wanted to touch on something we hadn't touched on really. Kat mentioned pet shoes briefly, but I wanted to talk about horseshoes.
Yeah.
Because horseshoes are particular to our planet and horses. But if you live in a fantasy planet or a science fiction planet, you might be riding thoats if you're on Barsoom, or you might be riding, if you're in Elric's world, you might be riding these weird horse-like things with claws instead of hooves. So maybe they don't have boots, or maybe they need winter boots, 5-toed boots or something like that. So if you have an animal that you're using as a beast of burden or as transportation, then that animal may or may not have footwear depending on the biology of the animal and the terrain and the climate. And that could be a plot point. Like if your horse, loses a shoe, that's a big deal if you're being pursued by dark riders or something, right?
Yeah, yes.
So if your Thoat loses a Thoat boot or whatever, you know, being pursued by a horde of green Martian, that could be a problem.
I'm suddenly going, wait, camels don't need shoes.
They
and
don't.
Neither elephants. Why do horses need shoes? There's something about horse physiology versus other mounted animal physiology that I don't understand, and clearly I need to go study this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, to my knowledge, a big part of the difference is that what you're really walking on is your toenail as opposed to your actual foot.
Right.
Whereas a camel is walking on its foot, and so is
an elephant. Yep.
Makes
but
sense.
Also think about the side things like horseshoes and good luck, right? Like that's part of the world of the Old West, but it's not directly related to footwear, but it's all about footwear, right? So it's bits of the culture get affected by the footwear technology.
Well, I mean, it's very easy to say, let's just ask, are there any superstitions about footwear in your world? That's a great question to ask.
This is how we get to fairy cobblers and Cinderella, right?
Yeah.
And 7-league boots.
Yes, or the shoemaker and the elves. Right.
And also winged sandals.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that Tengu tend to wear single-toothed geta.
Yeah.
Which are kind of tricky to balance on. And I'm trying to think of what else comes up.
I mean,
Puss in Boots.
Mm-hmm.
The cat puts on a pair of boots and all of a sudden he's a swashbuckler.
The shoes make the cat.
Yes.
The shoes make the cat.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm also thinking of the red shoes that cause you to dance to death.
Yeah, that's
or the shoes, or the red hot shoes that were put on
the non-bowdlerized Cinderella story.
Yes, yeah, the red hot.
I'm thinking of Snow White, I think.
No, it's the Wicked Stepsisters.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
and the stepmother
there is also another one in Snow White where the bad person
red hot.
Yeah,
it's quite brutal.
And then, there's the cement overshoes, or as would say, concrete galoshes. That's a big deal, right? That's a kind of fatal footwear, like the red shoes, only even less pleasant. And then, of course, there's the ruby slippers, right? That cause you to return to Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what other enchanted shoes there are. I know we're missing a bunch.
Well, there's shoes that are enchanted to be quiet, like so you walk silently.
Right.
That happens now and again.
I think there are some fairy gift shoes that I'm not thinking about as well. And also,
there
legends
is
about whether or not you're allowed
the
to
fairy
touch the ground.
shoemakers too.
The ones that you feed and then they
make
shoes overnight.
Yeah.
And there was in Tim Powers' The Anubis Gates, there is a character named Horribin the clown who walks on stilts always, and that's actually a plot point. There's a metaphysical reason why he only walks on stilts.
There's a whole mendicant tradition of whether or not mendicant monks and other ascetics and wanderers and mystics can wear shoes or not.
Yeah.
And what you do about them. And then there's, of course, rituals of foot washing that come with cultures where you have foot gear that lets your feet get dirty.
Yeah, right.
So, and then you also can't have the changing your gait by sticking a pebble in your shoe if you don't have shoes in your culture.
Yes, absolutely.
And I was just watching a bunch of stuff about footprints being used to create hoax cryptids on beaches and things. Like people like stomping around with weighted fake Bigfoot. What I find really interesting is apparently it used to be that people just didn't expect that the imprints would have any depth or consistency change based on the gait. So they were apparently actually fooled by flat, like plonk, 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 plonk. And I I keep being mystified by this. And I think it's a difference between expecting flexible footbeds. And I suppose if you grew up looking at sabots, we should talk about sabotage.
Sabots!
Literally throwing wooden shoes into the works to bring things to a halt.
In
how
the
do you
Netherlands, they're called
decide that?
klompen, which I think is an awesome word.
How do you decide that you're going to wear wooden shoes of that sort? I find it interesting that instead of affixing something flexible to the top, they just decided to carve into it. Is that to do with the carving gear that you have, or like protection you need on top? I don't quite understand, because
clearly there needs to be a history of wooden shoes written by somebody.
I'm sure somebody's already written one.
It probably is.
Probably somebody who's a PhD on wooden shoes.
I also, there's like other extra foot cultural things, like the Iranian reporter who threw shoes at George W. Bush.
Oh yeah,
right. You know, the Jack Rems, who runs Dark Carnival, back when there were all sorts of crazy action figures first starting to be made, suggested that would be a great action figure: Iranian reporter with shoe throwing action. I'm
thinking about Khrushchev. Khrushchev and the infamous banging a shoe on the table, right?
We will bury you. Yeah.
We will bury you.
Yeah.
And again, that's only possible with a shoe that comes off relatively easily, because I've worn like knee-high Minnetonka lace-up moccasins that, you can't get them off that fast.
No, none of them.
Ruins a dramatic moment.
Bang them meaningfully on the table with you if you become enraged quickly.
And the character building issue of like, how do you take your shoes off?
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time I read the description of Toad his shoes off, and I went, "Oh, right, yeah, that's what a lot of us do."
Yeah, interesting.
But you could write that moment of a persnickety character who actually like unlaces his shoes and like, takes them off. There's using the boot jack, and then when we were doing the pre-show, Juliet was talking about like shoe collector culture.
Yeah.
And
it's so funny. I had a student who was totally into sneakers and really not into English. So my strategy for getting him to write English was to try to get him to write about something that he cared about. And so, man, did I learn a lot about shoes. And, it's an entire subculture to the extent that people have like sneaker subscriptions where you get a pair of sneakers every month.
Limited edition special.
Lining up for them.
Oh yeah.
No, it's a big thing. We have footgear that goes all the way from I salvaged some rubber tires to this is really, really expensive, whether it's encrusted with jewels or, designer Louboutin, Jimmy Choo, etc., or these sneakers. And then there's a whole cowboy boot culture, which is kind of amazing because so many cowboy boots are never worn by people who get anywhere near a horse.
Yeah.
And then Americans think of that as a white male Western culture, or maybe just a white male and female culture. But in Michoacan, they wear these cowboy boots that have really long toes.
Go up.
And they go up. And they look a bit like those shoes that we got that in the West we learned about as sort of fairy tale Arabian Nights shoes, right? With curly toes and things. But this is watching these men wearing these total like Texas style yoked shirts and everything else, but they've got these fantasy shoes on.
Yeah,
it's amazing, and sometimes with the toes chained up, and humans will get relentlessly creative about anything, but that one did surprise me.
In Athens, there's the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And there's a special honor guard, and they wear special uniforms, and in fact, a special uniform on Sundays. But both versions of the uniform have these little black pom-poms on the feet, like these toe pom-poms.
Oh, that's that Ottoman Empire and Hussars kind of look, right? Interesting.
Yeah, it's wild. And they do this, they do something that to my mind looks a lot like John Cleese in the Ministry of Silly Walks, but they do this special kind of very formalized marching that raises the feet and makes the viewer focus on the feet with the little foot pom poms. I'm sure there's a Greek word for it. I don't know what it is.
There's
clearly
I mean,
a
whole bunch of dancing is about what kind of shoe you have.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of social dance where you're expected to wear certain kinds of soft bottom shoes.
Yeah.
And then
whether you're wearing shoes,
ballroom shoes, jazz shoes,
and then taps and clogs and dancing boots and
point shoes, of course, which we mentioned last.
Point shoes, which was mentioned.
So.
We didn't talk about the phenomenon of taxi shoes.
what?
Taxi shoes is a term for sort of strappy, thin-soled, high-heeled, spiked, etc., etc. They're not shoes designed for walking in. They're shoes designed for standing in. So if you are in a culture like New York, they are a shoe that you are expecting to get into a taxi in, as opposed to, or this is how I understand it. And New Yorker's going to like pop up out of the next PO box and tell me I'm wrong, but this is my understanding. And also, this is why during the height of the yuppie era, people used to talk about, oh no, now we're seeing women wearing sneakers with their pantyhose because they're trying to commute in comfort, and then slipping into these improbable 80s stilettos for the office, because sneakers
many of those shoes are just not for walking in.
Yeah. And gendered expectations of shoes.
Do you remember espadrilles?
I love espadrilles still.
Well, good.
I had an extensive shoe habit until pregnancy made my feet changed size, and then to my annoyance, they shrank back down again, so I could have kept some of them. But some people are on team, I'm going to wear the same shoes all the time. I contend that it makes your feet stupid because you're always in the same position.
They only have one foot habit.
Yeah. Well, it would be like what would happen to your hand dexterity if you wore mittens all the time.
Yeah.
So that's my particular prejudice. I'm also fascinated by the different ways that we have one word, sandal, which covers like an entire huge range. Yeah. Because it's any shoe that allows your foot to show. It seems to be a sandal.
Yeah.
Hi, you've reached Wade. Unfortunately,
I see that we have. Although I've also seen people have outrage about what parts show and what parts don't, because fashion designers, in an effort to be cheeky recently, have done like high-heeled, essentially boots, but the toes are all exposed. And then it's like, wait, what is that?
Yeah, like what even are we doing here?
What are we doing here?
Well, and then some people are very careful to pick their shoes so that certain parts of their feet won't show.
Toe cleavage. Yeah. Some people believe in a thing called toe cleavage, and I used to be kind of weirded out by this concept.
Well, I know that Birkenstocks in particular are indicators of subculture, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And any other brand of a similar sandal is not an indicator of the same subculture. So,
at
least in America.
Tevas had the same sort of passionate branded following for a while. I think that's fallen away a little bit as other shoes have become suitable for sort of river guides and other people who really love the Tevas for being wet and dry shoes. I think we're finally full circle back to that. And then I've been really fascinated by watching the evolution of reef walkers as stretchy materials have become more available, so that you can have shoes that you can wear in the water that have some kind of stretchy top that will keep your shoes on, but that is also breathable. So when you come out of the water, you have some hope of not having clammy feet all day.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of adaptations for how do we handle moving between wet and dry and tropical and coastal environments.
So we've talked a lot about that, right? About different shoes in different environments. We haven't, and we've talked some about zero G. We haven't talked about, or microgravity. Haven't talked about heavy G and light G planets. Like how, like you cannot wear high heels on a really heavy G planet. And if you did wear high heels on a heavy G planet, it would be some pretty heavy status indicator. Probably you've been genetically engineered to have feet that could handle it and to have balance in that environment, right? So that I just thought of that. I may even use it.
Go for it, Cliff. It's all yours.
I'm thinking about that and about how you would. So my question then is, in heavy G, can you get up on your toes? Because I think you would actually end up having musculature that would make it. I think that humans would be inclined to want to get up on our toes because, as a short person, I'm saying I want every inch of possible reach. And so I'm not entirely sure that heavy G means no high heels. I kind of am sitting here going, I think what happens is that instead of having this severe disparity between the front and the back, but even so, I feel like if you cushioned it and wedged it enough, I think people would try.
Well, people would definitely try, but they try everything.
I think platforms end up becoming a thing, but again, I'm also on team platform boots. So short. Did I mention short?
Well, on a heavy G planet, most people are probably fairly short, and so it would all the architecture and everything would be designed for shorter folk, I think.
Well, you know, we have touched a couple of times on shoe choices that are intended to influence the apprehension of the whole person, right? So you know, I am going to choose these shoes because not because people will need to look at them per se, but because I want to be 5 inches taller, for example. Or then there's also the sort of, I'm going to wear high heels because, you know, I don't think this is, honestly, I'm not sure that this is part of the person's thought process as they put them on. But one often hears that the backside of a female human being kind of tightens up if they're wearing high heels. And that might be a thing that so would be a reason to choose those shoes.
I will say that as a short person with short legs, I was trying to figure out why I was suddenly having a problem with restaurant chairs and everything else. And it's because I stopped wearing platform-heeled shoes when I had children. And I used to be effectively always carrying around a 3-inch riser or a 2-inch riser under my toes.
Yeah.
So that it didn't matter that I couldn't reach the ground.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, short for somebody from a different heritage background is like 5'5", 5'6", maybe in some cultures. I'm actually, you know, qualitatively short, although I'm taller than some of my friends. And the top shelf of the grocery store, the standard seat, not the tall seats, but the standard seats in restaurants, doctors' waiting rooms, all of those chairs are too big for me. Even my own dining room chairs are too big for me. So, footgear to adapt to that. I had not actually thought of it as a bit of like world bending that I'd been doing.
Yeah, interesting.
But fireproof gear, Doc Martens with their special soles that are supposed to be chemically resistant. The shoes that you wear in a kitchen.
Yep.
And the fact that, wow, Mario Batali, really, you're wearing melting shoes that have holes in the top. That's a choice.
Yep. So let me see if there was anything left because we're getting close to the end. But I'm just looking back at my Ah, yes. Actually, I think that we've done a lot of them. We haven't so much done mending. And there is actually a whole topic in the idea of repair.
Ooh, we could save it for that.
All sorts of things, yes. So I'm going to put repair on our list.
But yeah, shoving things in the soles of your shoes so that they at least don't immediately introduce everything.
Sure. Well, like also speaking of you need boots to shove a knife in your boot, right? Like if you're wearing moccasins, you can't really shove a knife in your boot in the same way. So
yeah,
there goes Mad Max and a bunch of fantasy characters.
I actually used to, when I was working at in the receiving department at Target back in my teen years, I was occasionally wearing these knee-high lace-up mocks, and I would shove a box cutter into the laces, and like I'd also like put a marking pen in them.
Well, right? I wish I'd seen it.
I hate pockets. I hate pockets because I don't have enough space on my body to really make the pocket work. Because if I put something 6 inches long in a pocket, it's like way down my thigh. It's really intrusive for me to carry it that close to my body. So I like pouches off of belts, and I like tucking things into my boots. But there's that traditional Scottish scandu, right?
Yeah.
Where you wear a knife boot, and it's a traditional thing. So.
And then there's shoe taboos, like no white shoes after Labor Day, for instance, which is entirely cultural.
Don't bite anything after Labor Day.
But shoes in particular, for some reason.
Well, also, we have all sorts of rules about what color shoe to wear with what color outfit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which, it's been really interesting watching these conversations unfold with a friend who's non-binary but had been socialized male, and so guys barely learn what color shoes to wear with what color suit if they're really dandy.
Yeah.
And so they are now wearing dresses and getting coached by all of their socialized female friends to say, no, with those, no, I know that dress is gray, but that gray is not quite that gray. So that instead of wearing the gray shoes that you thought you could wear because that's a gray outfit, you need to wear navy or black. And, and there's the other thing that really shocked me was somebody told me that nude colored shoes were supposed to actually be seamless with your skin color. So you would look like you had shoe feet. And I didn't know that was a thing. I just thought that was the weird neutral color you wore with difficult to I don't know.
That reminds me of the animated version of Beowulf, which was written by Neil Gaiman or co-written. But anyway, Grendel's mom wasn't like a big monster. Grendel's mom was sexy Grendel's mom, and she had high-heeled feet.
Yes, I thought that was completely ridiculous.
It was bizarre.
There's a Laurie Anderson song, which is part of the lyrics. Why don't you give me some of those high-heeled feet? And also,
actually, I'm gonna mention one thing. You know the hoof shoes.
I was just about to say hoof shoes. The people are making hoof shoes based on
like TV's Targo has.
So what they're doing is they're ripping off the heels from a high-heeled pump and building the bottom of the shoe under the toe bed, basically under the ball of the foot and the toe, and creating like cloven hooves and things.
That's cool. So I saw a PDQ Bach concert where he played a satyr. Peter Shickley played a satyr. Normally he wears, one of his trademarks is he wears these clodhoppers on stage with his tuxedo or whatever. And he had these like clodhopper shaped hooves that looked like they could fit over his clodhoppers that he was as a satyr on stage, I remember. But getting one thing I thought of and then forgot and thought of and just remembered again. When Juliet mentioned rears and high heels, 7 of 9 wears high heels.
Yeah.
She does.
Which
Why
is
does she wear high
ridiculous.
heels?
But you know,
Yeah.
she's in this cap suit, and I'd heard that Jerry Ryan wanted the heels because she was being put in a cap suit, but that's unconfirmed. But it's just bizarre. Like, why would a Borg returnee wear heels? Right? Within the world building, it makes no sense.
On the Discovery, on the new series, what's his name has those wild feet and custom boots to go with those feet, and it was a plot point at some point.
The prey species guys.
Yes.
I'm forgetting. Yeah.
Sorry, I haven't caught up on season 2, so I'm rusty now.
Well, I have not seen any of it, you guys. So
it's got some interesting world building. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I really, really want to see it. I'm gonna ask us to draw to a close at this point because we're hitting 5:03. I think that we've done enough. That I feel like we've covered a lot, and there's not another hour here. So
we have trod that ground.
For all of your careful consideration of footwear, you guys are awesome. Let's see. Coming up, I know that I'm going to be asking Heidi Stauffer to come back on the show because we want to do geology part 2, and geology part 2 is actually going to be focusing on geology in daily life.
Nice.
Which should be really awesome. I don't have a date fixed for that yet.
Yeah,
I know I'm also going to be having Vita Cruz on the show. So it will be really fun to talk to her about her work. She's coming on. I still have to confirm this, but all omens point to March 12th.
Okay, cool.
So we're going to have some fun stuff to do. Next week, though, I'm leaning towards the repair because that seemed like a really cool topic that came up today. So, all right, you guys.
Repair fix.
Super. Thank you for being here. I'm a little behind on my reports. I just started into footwear part 1.
Now you have a cohesive thing to do.
Yeah, there we go. I can do them all in one shot.
It'll be like a giant shoe rack.
The massive footwear post. That's actually not a bad plan.
Sounds good.
So for now, I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Juliet.